Security or insecurity, it starts from your home. If we can be able to be securing our own immediate home, the house, by raising our children, monitoring our children, and knowing what they do and how they are growing, and the company they keep, security starts from there. Where there is disconnect within the home, definitely it must affect the wider society, the wider community.
Law enforcement operations must be recalibrated, re-strategized, in such a way that perpetrators of this crime are easily fished out. I know that the Department of State Services has surveillance devices that are being put to effective use. I also do know that the police also have equipment to track these kidnappers. And if we put those structural measures to effective use, very effective use, over time, the crime will diminish and possibly fizzle away.
We have seen a trend of the regionalization of security threats. What it means is Southwest, you have the separatists, Northwest, and all of that. So each region is battling. So therefore, what can the government do to ensure that whatever the police is doing at those levels fits or attempts to address some of the concerns at that level? What we have seen is that sometimes they take their directive, it has to be Abuja and all of that. So how do we empower the commanders at those levels to address some of the issues that confront them?
There was a time these headsmen were all over our place killing people, and we rose to the occasion. And that is gone down because the people know the environment. But a situation where you bring somebody who does not know the terrain to begin to police the area, it becomes very difficult. And if you can see the Amoteku in the Southwest, I think they are effective.
Since some 276 girls were abducted from their boarding school in Chibok in 2014 in Borno State, kidnapping for ransom has almost become the order of the day in Nigeria. In fact, it is now being referred to as an epidemic.
Hardly would you read newspapers and don't see reports around kidnapping in different parts of the country, particularly around the north and west. So this again is an epidemic because it's not an isolated case. In the past we used to hear, before you hear those kind of reports, it takes a while. But now it has become a common feature.
Armed groups have taken a cue from the Boko Haram militants to engage in mass and individual kidnappings in different parts of the country. Apart from the Boko Haram insurgency, which is being tackled head-on by the government, other security challenges have subsequently reared their heads. Armed bandits have taken advantage of the weak security presence in many public and private schools, in rural communities, and even across state capitals to unleash their reign of terror and panic. The situation now begs the question, how did Nigeria get here?
The first set of victims of kidnapping were oil workers in the south-south area, around the Bayelsa and Port Harcourt axis. The perpetrators of that kidnap, as far as I can remember, were members of MEND. And negotiations were entered into with the oil workers and whoever else was involved in the negotiation. And I believe ransom was paid. That kidnapping was not for political reasons. It was more or less for criminal reasons. So others, took a cue from there. So we got it wrong as a nation when we started negotiating with kidnappers and paying ransom for the crime of kidnapping. And now it has become hydra-headed. It has become a monster. It has become a big problem.
The security crisis in Nigeria got progressively worse, particularly with the emergence of threats from the so-called armed bandits and unknown gunmen. The bandits' attack, which started in the northwest, have since spread to other parts of the country.
it's really disturbing, I must tell you, even though the government is making efforts to see how these issues will be resolved, but it's virtually escalating, and people are worried for their own security. Although we know that the primary purpose of government is provision of welfare and security for the people. But as it is now, we cannot leave it in the hands of government alone. It should be a collective responsibility where everybody should be involved.
Nigerians are concerned that kidnapping for ransom has become an epidemic, as it is mostly on soft targets like schools and unsuspecting travelers on major roads and highways.
Like if I'm going out, before I go out, I put my trust in God. I commit my journey into the God's hand. Where I live, we have what they call guest men in the night that guide my area. We do pay them monthly or yearly, and if I'm going out, I just put my trust in God. I know that God is with me.
Whatever movement I suspect, I make a report, so that if my neighbor is not there, then I am there. So I will not allow my neighbor or either the house or property to be vandalized or to make rough moves. Though that is why we are security conscious in any area. When you are going out, you make sure that your neighbor, either he lock up his house very well, doors and windows. Likewise, myself, I do same.
Apart from the challenge of armed banditry and other similar insurgencies and other crimes, a deadly conflict between herders and farmers in the country has also taken its fair share of lives. The violence perpetrated by armed herdsmen, which intensified in 2017, expanded to the south as herdsmen migrate in search of grazing areas for their cattle. Many farmers have been killed as the frequency of these attacks increased, forcing communities to take up arms in defense of their homes and source of livelihood.
If you look at the Nigerian population presently, I would put it at approximately 250 million Nigerians. Compare that to the number of policemen that we have. In ratio, I think it's inadequate. We may need more police and other security operatives to be able to effectively tackle some of the criminal activities or challenges, security challenges that we have. But it's not enough to have huge human factor for tackling security challenges. How well trained are they? How well supervised? How well equipped are they? How well remunerated or how well motivated are they? If a policeman puts his life on the line and gets killed in the course of trying to rescue a kidnapped victim or victim of any crime whatsoever, how well is the police officers or security operatives' family, catered for?
The challenge of insecurity is not peculiar to Nigeria alone. Many countries around the world face their share of insecurity challenges. Since it is the responsibility of the government to protect its citizens and ensure safety of lives and property, how much political will on the part of leadership in Nigeria is needed to overcome the country's security challenge, and how effective has the strategy so far deployed been?
Perhaps where government needs to think through is the area of rejigging its structures. Because again, crime, criminality, they evolve. So when they evolve that way, you also need to change your strategy. These days we talk about, community policing or intelligence-led, policing. So what it means is that it's not only the kinetic aspect. When we see in our attempts to curtail, we just go full out and trying to bombard forests, hideouts of kidnappers. But we are not also looking at how to engage communities, especially around the conflict-affected states or the states where you have kidnapping happening, community people have a lot of information. They can know those within the communities that this person has criminal tendencies and quickly provide that information to security actors. So when that information eventually comes, what does the state do with it? Do they quickly act on it?
If government can also address some of the basic issues like employment, provision of basic amenities, I think it will go a long way. So we should not concentrate efforts on the kinetic approach by buying Tucana aircraft, buying armament. Those will not solve the problems. There are basic things that has to be done in terms of employment, in terms of basic amenities like health, education. When you address all these things, I think the problem will be a little solved. There's no society without challenges.
In spite of government's efforts, the security situation in Nigeria has gotten worse. Shortly after the attack at the Government Science College Kagara in Niger State, the Minister of Defense, retired Major General Bashir Magashi, declared it the responsibility of every Nigerian to be on alert in the face of insecurity. Since then, Nigerians have been asking how possible it is for unarmed Nigerians to defend themselves against armed bandits. Some say it can become a case of what the Americans describe as bringing a knife to a gunfight.
I've been advocating for creation of state police. I'm happy government is buying into it. I'm also calling for liberalization of firearms. There are rules of granting firearms license. Nobody is giving firearms to protect yourself. What you have now on ground, where you have license, double barrels, and this is for gaming. It's not for protection. But if government comes up with the issue that there should be a way of liberalizing arms acquisition. If I have arms in my house that is licensed, you cannot just boldly come into my house. So it will serve as a deterrent to others. I think government should be looking towards that direction too, to see that they liberalize issue of firearms, and responsible people, of course, they will ask who is responsible, but there are guidelines for issuance of firearms.
Yeah, because of what is happening, there's that conversation. It started with the Benue State governor who was trying to push that agenda because it was becoming overwhelming both for the state, and the state was actually asking, or the state subnational was actually asking citizens that, take up arms. I will not subscribe to that because we have not put in mechanisms or institutions that can act as checks when something goes wrong in that regard. You have it in the US. US is free. Everybody has, most people have firearm and all of that. But we have also seen the challenge it has created for countries. Rather, what I would say is that it comes back to the states, and the constitution is the ground norm. The security and welfare of citizens should be the primary responsibility of the state. So government needs to now take ownership, because what is happening now is that the monopoly over coercive power, it appears that the state is losing grip on that. How does the state come back, bounce back very strong, and pick up that monopoly? In other words, anything that has to do with threats to the citizens is taking it up as a matter of concern.
In the wake of renewed calls for Nigerians to take up arms to defend themselves against bandits in their communities, security agencies have asked Nigerians not to take up arms illegally. They called for the support and partnership of Nigerians in promoting government's efforts towards securing Nigeria.
The Constitution makes it very clear in subsection 2B of section 14 that the security and welfare of the people is the primary responsibility of government. And here we're talking about the federal government. If the federal government, therefore, is not measuring, up and stepping up effectively in this regard, it is perfectly okay for individuals, to become more security conscious, and or for, people in our various communities to try to get their act together by putting in place measures that ensure their immediate survival, their safety, their security also. So the establishment of regional security outfits across the country may be a reflection of the inability of the federal government to live up to their expectation, a reflection of this constitutional provision that I mentioned earlier. But so long as such activities complement efforts of government, then it's all well and fine. People have a responsibility to do everything within the limits of the law to ensure their survival, their safety and security.
As the spate of kidnapping for ransom continues to grow in Nigeria, ordinary citizens as well as poor public school children are now targets. How can ordinary Nigerians avoid getting kidnapped?
Suspicions of almost everybody. Trust only yourself. Suspect the next person. So in that way, you'll be very conscious of your surroundings while outside. And as regards to your area where you live, I think it has to do with community security. Like in my area now, we're trying to form a vigilante, you understand, whereby everybody pays at the end of the month. There's a certain amount every household needs to pay, you understand. That is the best way, because the only thing is for all of us to come together. The government cannot do everything. Now all of us have to be involved in the community policing. So that is the only thing. That's the best way I think we can secure ourselves.
Yeah, the way the thing is these days, everybody has to be alert. Yes. Though we may not have, we are not security agencies that do that job. But if you are looking at it today, the security alone cannot do this job. We have to pass out information. We have to stand there. Even if we can use stone to defend some of these things, it will be better too. Because today, if we are expecting the security personnel to do that job alone, it will be very tedious because it's getting out of hand already.
Security is the state of being free from danger or threats. It is mostly referred to as protection from hostile forces. Security is freedom from or resilience against potential harm or unwanted coercive change caused by others.
It is not just in allocating funds, increasing budgets around security and defense, but also to say that equip people, the security officers that you have that are going to be protecting the people. For instance, I would ask, we don't often see the police again go on patrol. It is when the police has heard that, oh, there's some gangs around there. You see that show of force within 2 patrols, they put on their siren and all of, and it ends there. But what we're saying is the usual patrol. In my own area where I stay, I can't remember when I see the police just patrolling. What it does is that it gives people, good people, the sense of safety, that the police is very close. Security agencies, they are very close. They are interested in the safety of the people. It also wards off, the criminal gangs, because when they know that police is constantly patrolling this area. But the challenge will be again that what is the funding mechanism for such institution? So for the police to embark on regular patrol, do they have enough fuel in their vehicles? You understand? Are officers motivated enough to say they are going out? Because within those hours, anything can happen. It is a duty that they have already, the commitment that they have signed already. So I think it's important that the state should step up its game in terms of the human security angle of it, and again, its approach towards protecting citizens.
Some private and government facilities across the country have had to put up measures in place to avoid attacks. But what happens to the millions of vulnerable Nigerians who fall prey daily?
When we are entering vehicle, at times you look at this is human own. You look at the people that are there. If they are all boys, you can allow them to go. At times we pray before we enter. At times we look at the person driving, look at the mood. Even though we are human beings, at times we can make mistakes. But we look at the people, because they use all sorts of strategy. At times they will bring a woman that has a baby. you will think that all of you are passengers. While you're on the way, they start their mess.
Experts suggest some warning signs to look out for.
In the metropolis, like Abuja for instance, there are known black spots. You know, you try and avoid such areas because of this one chance and the rest of it. Avoid such known prone areas. Live a normal life, not ostentatious life. And in fact, apart from the fact that it's a criminal, I see people and I marvel, even the politicians and the elites spraying money in public. You're only exposing yourself to dangers. Then for your homes, you need to also reinforce the security in your house. People stay, no cameras in their houses, and they just live a normal life. The cameras, of course, will not stop the criminals from coming into your house, but it will aid investigation in case there's an incident. It's now a personal and individual responsibility that you must take care of your own security in your house. If you can provide power, provide water, so why not provide security when security is a basic requirement for you for human existence?
They don't just go about executing their criminal or nefarious activities without first carrying out some recce. They don't. If they have a target, they would try to study the target over a period of time until they are sure that they can strike, and then they proceed to strike. In that case, they already know what time they want to strike, by what means they are going to strike, and getaway routes. And if they are working in a group, they may flee in different directions, but also have a convergence point thereafter. So if you're observant, you'll be able to know, if you watch very carefully around the environment, it shouldn't be difficult to know when somebody is monitoring you, watching your movement. Therefore, you may not make yourself a creature of habit, doing the same thing, the same routine at the same time.
In a bid to beef up the capabilities of the Nigerian armed forces, defense has consistently been allocated high budgetary allowance for many years in a row. But Nigerians say the impact is not being felt as the security challenge increases despite the vast funding.
If you make all the resources available to the appropriate agencies of government that are responsible for tackling specific challenges in security, and you do not hold them to account for budgetary provisions or monies that are made available for them to procure arms and the wherewithal to tackle crime, then you're bound to have poor results, because everybody knows that we have a major challenge with corrupt practices in this country. So one way to be able to tackle this effectively is to hold those that have been given charge of responsibility for managing our security architecture accountable for the responsibilities they are given in terms of resources that are released to them.
One of the most common slogans in Nigeria is "Security is everybody's business." There is also the slogan, "If you see something, say something." Apart from these, how else can ordinary Nigerians contribute towards fighting crime and criminality in their localities?
Insecurity is a challenge, is a problem that is affecting everybody. So you have to be conscious of the environment. And as a citizen, if you notice any suspicious activity, maybe new people in the environment, or probably you have people that you are doing something that is really not going well with you in the environment, you have to be conscious of that, and then inform the security enforcement, the security people, so that they will know that, oh, something like this is happening, and then you find solution to it before it escalates.
When you see any strange movement, you report it to the appropriate authority, or within your locality you can form a kind of security like guards which can always watch any strange move around the given environment.
Have the phone numbers of the appropriate security institutions or authorities around you, or officers around you, and don't only call them when you have a problem. keep in touch with them as often as possible. You know, fraternize with them, and so when there's a problem and you call them, they will respond almost immediately. And more importantly, let's try to work together. You know, in our neighborhoods and communities. You know who your neighbors are.